Thank you for joining us. We're excited about sharing your time with us today. Right up front, I want to thank Fazal Khan, who is our IT guru hosting this in the background and live streaming this webinar. I'm Alice Castleman, the founding president of ACER. It's a charity I founded in '87. We work with partners to measure, monitor, maintain, and report success rates of planted trees and forestry biodiversity. We have worked with TRCA for 7 years in tracking for success approach to planting. We believe we can help you add value to your programs. Today, I'm delighted to introduce our new program person, Sadia Butt, with a fresh doctorate in forestry, who will introduce our speaker. Sadia has been volunteering with us in the field since 2005, and she's now able to join us. She's now responsible for all of our programs, and she will introduce Stephanie. Take care.
Thank you, Alice. The work that you have done through ACER, oops, you got mute. We're in the same room. Alice, you have to mute.
I'm on mute.
Okay. Uh-oh. Hi. Oh, work that ACER does is so critical to community involvement, making the urban forest understand that monitoring is an important part of citizen science. Your impact in this area can be seen in many recent organizations, and recently on CBC, they highlighted monitoring through the community. ACER is pleased to have worked with Stephanie Smith, the coordinator of community learning at TRCA. Stephanie graduated from the University of Guelph in environmental studies and has been leading planting and monitoring teams with the TRCA for 7 years. The tagging and measuring protocols we developed together have proven a great help in changing methodology due to tracking success. And here's Stephanie to share her findings with us.
Hello, thank you so much for having me today. I'm very excited to talk about our young tree and shrub monitoring and maintenance program. And I am very excited to get started. So my name is Stephanie Smith. I'm a coordinator with Toronto Region Conservation with our community engagement programs, and that's in our restoration and infrastructure division. So I help run the young tree and shrub monitoring and maintenance program that we developed with ACER. So today I'm just going to run through how we do our program and the benefits it has brought to us. So it has been very successful in meeting many of our deliverables within our team and within our division. Before we start, though, I'd like to do a land acknowledgement. So although we find ourselves geographically dispersed today, meeting here in an online environment, I'd like to begin by recognizing that we all work together and live and gather on traditional Indigenous territories. So we respectfully acknowledge that the lands that we are situated on are traditional territories and treaty lands, in particular, those of the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe of the Williams Treaty First Nations, the Huron-Wendat, the Haudenosaunee, and are now home to many diverse First Nation, Inuit, and Métis peoples. And through our work with land and water resources within the Greater Toronto Region, TRCA appreciates and respects the history and diversity of the land and is grateful to have the opportunity to work and meet in this territory. So we invite you to acknowledge the territory and treaty lands in your local area and encourage you to explore the interactive map at native-land.ca. So we do have many different tools that we've developed. You saw at the beginning, Acer has their promotional video. We also have a promotional video that we use to help us engage community and corporate groups before they come out to a planting, because this program is also part of our community planting days. So it's a tool we use to engage the community, which we'll be talking about a little later in the presentation. So the sites that we choose to implement this program on are community restoration areas. We have set aside these areas that we know we're going to be coming in with community groups, corporate groups, and school groups. And because we are investing so many resources, we institute this program or implement this program. And that helps us just ensure the most success that we can have with that investment. And also it can help us when we're doing any reporting for grants and deliverables. So Acer has graciously helped us set up this program at Toronto Region and also provided a lot of the equipment in the beginning to help us get started. So for the planting day, for the program, we set aside 10% of the plants that we've planted to enter into our measurement program. So we tag a minimum of 10%. If we've only planted 10 species, or 10 plants of a certain species, we'll monitor 2 of those. So we have just a minimum of 10%, but sometimes we go above. And we found that that will be the best representation of what's happening on the site. And they're tagged with a unique identifier, which is a metal tag, which Acer provides for us. And on the day of the planting, we take baseline measurements so we can come back and compare measurements year after year. So for the first 3 to 5 years is when we run the program. And with that unique identifier, we can see which measurements go with which plant and compare year after year. In the follow-up visits, so we follow up on each community restoration site. We follow up at least once a year for the next 3 to 5 years. And we found that 3 to 5 years is really the spot of seeing if it's going to establish or if we need to do more infill. So during these visits, we'll do another round of measurements on the same plants. And in this, we measure the root collar, the height, and the crown. So those are our quantitative measurements. And we take qualitative measurements as well. So we note the stance, if it's standing or leaning, the survival rate, any browse or insect damage, or anything else that'll negatively affect the plants that we're monitoring, and also the general area. So when we come back to do these visits, we can also make sure that we make note of any infrastructure that needs to be put in place. So thanks to our deliverables and our measurements, we can see, oh, we need deer fencing, and the investment of plants that we've put at this site versus survival rate would make deer fencing a fiscally responsible option. And we collect all this data on our tool, on our Trimble. So it's a GPS tool that we use, and we can have a really good, accurate data point on it. It's very good at getting the precise GPS point. And that's something that we've worked with Acer back and forth to try and find the best tool. And we found that a very good GPS unit, along with, we use the collector program from ArcGIS, has the best results and saves us the most time to refine the plants when they're overgrown with competition. And it's definitely the best return on investment. So for maintenance, we'll come in, and after our measurement and data collection, we will make a plan for maintenance at the site, and that's based on the measurements and qualitative and quantitative that we take with our program. So we have our invasive species removal, and that's always, every time we're going to a site, we're noting if there's any invasive removal needed, like buckthorn removal. And then also just vegetative competition removal if it's growing up over our plants. And that's based on how fast our plants are growing, the type of vegetation we view on site, and how resilient that vegetation is to any competition. And that's the data that we can extrapolate from our measurement and qualitative data that we take. And we do any infrastructure repairs. So if any deer fencing that we've put up needs assistance, we'll repair it, and any watering. So when we're going, we're also looking for dehydration. And if it's a site that we know in the past has needed a little bit of help, we'll come at least once a year and we'll water it with our water truck. So these maintenance plans are devised from our YTMP results, and they're captured by our rapid restoration assessments, which are our RRAs. So rapid restoration assessment is something we do division-wide. So not just with our community engagement sites, we do it even with sites that are planted just by staff. And that's to go back and take more qualitative measurements and get an overview of how the site is doing. So with our Young Tree and Shrub program, we found we get really great data, but just the overall impression of the site wasn't being captured. So that's where we've added in this rapid restoration assessment. And we do that on our Trimble as well. And for that, we're using Survey 123, which is another ArcGIS program. So the benefits to our program are numerous. So we really can tell where the investment needs to come from for our infrastructure. We can tell based on the browse and the survival rate, the cost for replacement of plants that have been browsed. Is it worth it to put in an expensive infrastructure piece like deer fence? Or if we're having a lot of rabbit browse, we can go through different tools and techniques to help mitigate that and see what's working best so we know where to invest. And we're in the middle of that right now. So at some of our sites that Young Tree and Shrub program has identified as heavy rabbit browse sites, we're using a mixture of a couple different techniques. So first, we are investing in landscape fabric lining a deer fence so the rabbits can't see in. And we're spraying that with Bob-X. Bob-X is an anti-rabbit spray that will repel them because of the smell. So we're spraying that on the fabric and the plants. And we're seeing which sites are responding well to that, one piece or both pieces being implemented. And through our measurement program, we can capture those results so we get best return on investment. And our planting technique has definitely changed thanks to the Young Tree and Shrub program. We found that planting bigger nodes, in the beginning we were planting nodes of 3 or 4 of the same species spaced out. And we found that planting more of the same type of species closer together really helps with the overall survival rate. So we have rabbit browse come in, but we can repel it if there's enough of the same species in an area to survive and overtake any loss. So that's a big change that our team has really changed thanks to our Young Tree and Shrub results. Another benefit is when we're going to a site, we can talk about competition removal. So on the screen, you can see that this is a very heavily burdock site. There's a big burdock population, and we have really invested in taking down that burdock and putting up landscape fabric, and we are able to tell how many times we need to remove it based on the measurements of the surviving plants. And we have another site coming up in Brampton that's in Wildfield Park that's going to be a heavily burdock site too. And thanks to this site and our YTMP program, we can see, okay, which techniques worked best here that we can bring to this other site, again, to just reduce cost and maximize benefit. And of course, it helps with our species selection. So we know if we get to a site and our dogwoods are doing very well, but our nannyberries aren't, when we're planting in the future, we can plant more dogwoods and also plants that have similar needs and requirements as the dogwoods, because those type of plants will thrive. Also, from our measurement program, we have found that certain plants take longer to establish in certain settings. So if our trembling aspen, let's say, isn't doing that well at one site, but we can come back and we can, after year 3, see a big jump. We know in the first 3 years that growth is going to be slower. So we're going to still invest in planting trembling aspens at that site, but we know that it's not going to take off for a couple of years. So we can do more future planning with our species selection and what we expect to see at the site. So those are some really big sort of fiscal and planning benefits, but we also have a lot of community involvement benefits. So because we are planting so much of our plants with our community, corporate, and public groups, we really want to maximize success of these plantings in particular. And that's because we have such a great relationship with our partners and our relationships. We just want to make sure that we're taking as great care of these sites as we can. And that definitely comes into play when we're talking about even infrastructure investment. So if it's going to maximize a site that a corporate group has invested in, we're definitely going to be able to put that up, just because it is so important that we involve the community and make sure those plantings are successful. So another great thing about involving the community in the measuring process, we can really create a relationship that people can have with the planting in their work. So we do this in 2 ways. The first way we do it is day of investment. So as we're putting the plants in the ground, we engage community members to take baseline measurements. We get people to come in and we teach them about the types of plants they've planted and what we are going to do as a team and organization to ensure these plants' success, or the success of these plants. And that really helps just create a connection, even further than coming in and being really proud and happy of the work they've done, which is always amazing. It's going to create that long-term connection where they just have a deeper understanding and appreciation. And that is something that we found they bring back year after year and event after event. Myself and my team have all had people who have been engaged for this program at the end of a planting, and they've come back the next year and they're so excited and they say, "Oh, I remember you. I remember doing the measurements. How are these plants doing?" Because it just creates that deeper connection with what we're doing and how we're interacting with the public. And another way that we engage the community is through, we have an adult volunteer program. So on our team, we have a couple coordinators, myself included, that run our adult volunteering program, where we recruit adult volunteers throughout the spring, summer, and fall to come in and take the measurements and do the program on sites that have previously been planted. So before, when we were talking about coming back to the site and doing the maintenance and the planning and the measuring, those are things that our volunteers all get involved with. So we'll come out for a day with a few volunteers that are interested, and we'll come in, we'll do our measurements, we'll do our maintenance. And that's just another way that people can really take stewardship and ownership of their planting and their local environment. And it's a great way to get out into nature and enjoy and just appreciate all the green spaces and nature spaces that TRCA and all of our partners work so hard to maintain. It just brings it into the forefront. It shows people how to access them, different ways of enjoying them, and also it showcases the care that we take in everything we do and every time that we're putting plants in the ground. So it's a really great way to connect with the community members on another level. So we have our day of connection and also our future connection with that volunteering program. So that is everything from my presentation side. I'd love to answer any questions that anyone has, and I can turn it back to Acer.
Hello there. Have a question? Hello? Am I on?
Yes, you are. We're
Okay. My question is, Stephanie, how old are the trees that you're planting? Like you were saying, okay, every 3 to 5 years, measuring within the first 3 to 5 years, but how old are the seedlings when you're young trees that you plant? So we'd have to add that on to the age of the planting?
Yes, exactly. So it definitely varies, and it varies from species to species, but it also varies within a planting. So sometimes we will have plants that are 1 to 3 years old if they're a fast-growing plant and we grow them in our nursery. Sometimes they're even older if we're ordering them from other nurseries, or if they're a coniferous plant that takes a little longer to establish. Typically, we do plant plants when they're at the stage of a 1-gallon pot to a 3-gallon pot. Most often is a 1-gallon pot, but we do occasionally go up to 3 gallons.
That's fabulous. I have got another question here. How close are you planting the trees?
So it definitely depends on our agreement with the municipality and where and how we're planting, but we have found that we've had the greatest success planting even within the recommended area. So general knowledge or general understanding is that it's recommended to plant shrubs 0.5 meter apart and to plant trees 1 to 3 meters apart. We have found that we have really good success shrinking that number a little, especially with the shrubs. So we'd plant them very close side by side in groups of 7 or 8, and that will just help it increase its resilience with rabbits and deer and even competition. We do put down mulch. So we have 2 different types of mulch. We have a mulch mat and a chip mulch. If we put them all close together, that mulch can overlap and just further suppress any competition, which really helps just create a little island of sunshine and water that these plants can get in, and they can be a little more successful.
That's very cool. Got another question. So it's understandable that in early plantings you would repel the browsers, and then one could actually use that same data to determine how to make rabbit and deer friendly locations. And while you were speaking, it seemed that there was also reference to actually allowing some of the areas to become food sources by doing the dense planting. So how's that? Can you speak further to that?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's an excellent point. So there's certain areas where it doesn't make sense for us to put in any infrastructure. So deer fencing, if it's in a very highly visible public area or behind people's houses, sometimes we're not able to put up any fencing or fabric. And so in that case, we would definitely defer to some of our other mitigation procedures like dense plantings. We definitely want to make sure our investments are in the right areas. So we want to make sure that if we are putting up something like deer fencing, which is very expensive, that we're doing it in an area that's going to have the biggest return. So if we know that there's going to be minimal species loss, but some species lost due to browse, we will account for that in the amount of plants we order and how densely we plant, because sometimes that's a better investment than putting up an infrastructure that would take a while to for maintenance and taking down. Sometimes it's better to just include that in our calculations, in our order calculations.
Very cool.
I would like to mention that what you're talking about in that planting, denser plantings, is now proven in research from Simard, using the radioisotopes out in the BC, researching the ecosystem underground with the mycelia and so on. And this is new. She's just written a new book out there. And so I think you should feel very pleased that your field work is really proving what she's tried to prove with isotopes, but you're now putting it into practice. And I think it's important because we all remember 2 meters between trees, but I know when they plant them closer, and our experience in planting for change in schoolyards, that closer it makes them grow faster, healthier, and we've got a real forest in a few years.
Absolutely. And we do have some very successful sites where most of our planting has survived, and it is able to still, so it is very dense, and the trees are very close to the shrubs because everything has really exploded, but it's still able to create that habitat that we need.
Yes.
And everything, it doesn't become a monoculture. Still little bits of every species are really thriving.
Yeah, very good. Excellent. Well,
there's one more question.
One more question, okay.
So do you have the opportunity to share this information regarding success rates with the municipalities in the TRCA's watershed? And obviously with other, maybe I'm just going to add to, with other
conservation authorities
as well in neighboring watersheds. Have you had that opportunity?
Yes. So my manager, Vince Delia, he sends out packages to the municipalities with our results in them from our program results, along with a lot of our metrics about how many people we've engaged and how many plants we've planted. I don't know if we have sent any out to other conservation authorities. It's definitely data that we can share, but I'm not sure about the process. That would be something I would check in with Vince about, but I know he does share it with the municipalities and our stakeholders.
Okay, thank you very much, Stephanie. This has been wonderful to update our relationship with numbers and money and so on, and fabulous information supporting the concept of tracking for success. So I'd like to move to closure because we said 12 o'clock, I think.
Alice, you got one more question from Jonathan Brown.
Oh, Jonathan Brown has a question.
How is your planting program connected to municipal asset management GIS systems?
Great. So that's an excellent question. And it's not one that I necessarily have the answer to, but I can definitely follow up and send out some information about that.
Thank you. And Jonathan, to be full disclosure, Jonathan's a partner in our MyDon proposal for the Don River Portland's project. And we've just come in the top 3 of applications to take it forward with this concept of citizen science along the watershed with real data from TRCA and the river, and our citizen science staking vegetation inventories and playing a game to increase their knowledge and increase data collection. So keep an eye out for MyDon.
Excellent.
Anyway, yeah, it's brand new. We just found out. Okay. So I think maybe because we're coming to a close, unless there's further questions, I'd like to thank you for joining us today, everyone who's on this call or live stream. And we believe that we can help others add value to their programs and the long-term collection of data that is cumulative and compatible with volunteers using the benchmark and baseline measurements to set up for further checking out success rates and planning management changes in methodology and data collection and so on. So I just recommend that we check out our publications on our website, which is www.acer-ACRE. It's up on a banner going underneath my face right now. But thank you so very much. And thanks Sadia and Fazel as well as all of you who joined us today.